Hi, gang. I thought today we'd do something a little different. So, today we are going to crochet ourselves a little cowl. Now, this is one I just made up the pattern. I'm very comfortable with crochet, so it's easy enough for me to do. But on wearing it, I'm thinking I would like to put an extra row of long locks in the middle so that it would be more of a waterfall. So, I'm going to grab my equipment and I will show you how to make a crochet cowl using long lock yarn, lock spun yarn, long locks, whatever you want to call it. But I thought I'd show you how to crochet with it so that if you don't knit or you're not comfortable knitting, you can crochet with it. So let me get everything together, get set up, and I will show you how it's done. All right, we're ready to get started. I have here my bin. I have my extreme tailspun yarn wound up in a ball. I have another skein in case I need it. And I have two balls of, I think it's a merino. Actually, they look like they may be two different breeds, but the weight of the yarn is about the same. It's a hand spun yarn from ages ago, so I don't really remember what it was. And I'm going to work with an eye hook, which would be big for this weight of yarn, but I want it to be nice and loose and drapey. So I did about the same here with this. Crochet tends to be a very heavy, dense way of working things. So the way to get some drape is to just increase your hook size so that you're changing your gauge, but it also makes it flow a lot better. You can see how soft this is. It just crunches really nice. It's lovely. So that's why I'm using an eye hook with this weight of yarn. So basically, what we're going to do is make a crescent shawl. And in order to do that, we just have to use the circle theory, just not make a full circle. So I'm going to 1, 2, 3. I'm going to chain 3, and then I'm going to go back into that first stitch, and that counts as my first stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Holy, I'm rusty today. 6, 7, and 8. Now this yarn is fairly fluffy, like I can feel the spring in it. So I could probably even go up another hook size. I'm not going to, but I could to get that drape. Now when I'm working, my chain 2 always counts as a stitch. To make a circle, you have to increase each row by the same number of stitches you started with. So I started with 8 stitches, so my second row will be 16. So I want to do 2 stitches in each stitch. Here, do you want me to work it out closer? Trying to flatten it out. It's not working. I'll just keep working down here. I'm just working double crochets. You can work single crochets, treble crochets. You can work whatever you want. Oh, and I'm speaking in American crochet terms. So I believe a double crochet is a treble in British. 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. And then when I do my last stitch, I usually work 1 in the space and then 1 in the stitch. I don't know why, I just do. So there's the start of our crescent shawl. So I am going to work, let me look at my original prototype here. I wanted to add locks about here. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So let's go with the 8th row. We could probably even go to the 7th row because my locks are going to be long enough to drape down to here and then drape again. All right, so I will do 7 rows and then we will start adding locks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we'll do 6 rows and then start adding locks because we want to add them on the 7th row. I'm not much of a designer. It takes me a little bit to get my head around it, but let's do that. So I will work the 6 rows and I'll be back when we're ready to add the locks. We've reached row number 6. So our next row, we are going to want to add our long locks. Now we're going to be working with 2 balls of wool. Things are going to get tangly. I usually plop my plain yarn to the side and I keep this one on my left because it generally requires more handling. So I had a long leader on this one. I don't need 90% of that, so I'll just toss it off to the side. First thing I want to do is untangle my locks so they're hanging down. I usually do this when I'm balling the yarn, but for some reason I didn't this time. I was just not paying attention. When I'm filming, I usually plan to film 3 or 4 videos in a day, so I do all my filming at once, including all the prep and everything. So sometimes it's only 2 videos, depends on how labor intensive it is, and then I edit them up later and release them as I go. So when I was prepping today, I obviously didn't take enough time. There we go. So we have some locks all dangling down and ready to use. We are going to take our project and we are going to take some of that leader and we're going to chain 1 with both of them. Then we will drop the tail end and we'll chain our second one just with our plain yarn. Now we're going to take the base of our extreme tailspun and we're going to lay it over the top of the stitch. Going to go through, oh sorry, double crochet, yarn over, go through your stitch, pull up a loop, then we're going to lay our yarn, lay our tailspun over, take our plain yarn, do through 2 loops and then through 2 loops. So what we've done is we have incorporated this tailspun yarn into the project. We're going to pull our tail to the side, yarn over, go down to our next stitch. Oh, sorry, I messed up on my increases. This one should have been made in the first stitch. So we will just go back, yarn over, into the stitch, pull up, go under, or lay that tailspun over, go through 2 loops of our plain yarn, and then through 2 loops of our plain yarn. Move our tail over. Now we are going to want to have 5 double crochets and then an increase. So we've done an increase. We're going to go yarn over, into the stitch, pull up a loop, put that tailspun yarn over, then pull through that, and then pull through the 2 loops. So that's 1. And we want to do 5 over, in, pull up, pull the tailspun over, through 2 loops, through 2 loops. That's 2. Pull your tail aside, yarn over, pull up a loop, through, and through. So that's 3 into the stitch, 4 into the loop, flip a loop, 5. Now we want to do an increase. Same way. 1. We're going to pull our tail over. We're just doing that in the same stitch. 2. All right, so here's how our tails are looking. So now we want to do 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we can get one more in there before the next tail. 5. Now the reason I do that first, pulling it through, is so that the yarn is not just lying flat down here where you wouldn't get to see any of the color of the tailspun. By lifting it up, it kind of fills in the holes between the stitches, so it looks like you've actually done a different row. It puts it right in slap dab in the middle, so you can see how you have your space here in your double crochets. It actually fills that space, so you get the extra color pop from the yarn between the tails. If you don't want to do that, if you find it too fussy, you can also just go, this is an increase stitch, so we'll just hold it against the base, do 1 and 2. I'll do a couple of them that way so you can see the difference. 1, pull the tail over, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to pull that tail over. And 5. So now we're set up to do our next increase. Now you can see how here the color fills the center of the row, and here it's smashed down against the top of the previous stitch, and you still have these openings here, which is fine. You still get some of that color, but I just prefer the look of it with those holes filled with the strand of the yarn, the tailspun yarn in between. So to fill that hole, just go yarn over, pick up your stitch, go under the extreme tailspun, pull it through, and then stitch on top of it. And that places it right in the middle. And we're doing an increase here, so we will go 1 and 2. Then we'll pull the tail over. So now we have to do 5. So yarn over into the stitch, pull up, pull that tailspun yarn over your hook, go through 2 loops of your regular yarn, and then finish your double crochet. So that's 1. Pick up. I'm going to pull that tail over first. 2. I'm trying to do this so you can see. Into the stitch, pull it up, put that tailspun over the hook. Now I've lost count, there's my increase. So that was 3. Hold on. We have a tail there. I'm going to pull that over. If I'm not trying to film and explain everything I'm doing, it's definitely not as futzy as it looks, but I'm trying to focus on too many things at the moment. So there we go. There's our increase. That's 4. One more. I'm going to pull that tail over, yarn over, into the stitch, pull it up, put the tailspun over it, through 2 loops, then through 2 loops. 5. So where I've pushed the yarn up to the middle as opposed to where I've kept it down alongside the previous stitch. All right, so let's finish off this row. So as you come into your next tail, you got to make a decision. Do you have enough there? I think we have enough there to do another stitch. So 1, and then I'm going to pull the tail over. And 2. Now I do 5 regular double crochets. We've reached the end of our row. We're going to turn it back. There's how the back is looking. Getting some little pops of color in there. Now, basically when you're working a circle, you'll be increasing the number of double crochets between your increases by 1 every row. So because we had 5 double crochets between our increases on this row, the next row will be 6 double crochets between the increases. And that'll keep it going in this flat circular pattern so it doesn't do the ripple. All right, now before we go back, take a minute to breathe. You made it through the row. Grab your coffee. If you look from this side, you can see that our tails look a little sparse. So we are going to work our tailspun back and see if that fills it in. And if not, then we'll do another row across. It's just to make it more full. So look at my yarns untangled here. Pull it some extra there, pull it some extra there. Make sure my tails are loose. So grab your plain yarn and you want to do a chain 2 for your first double crochet. So go around, go like under the yarn for your tailspun and chain 1 and chain 1 with just the plain yarn. Now we're going to have tail right at the beginning. Now we're working from the other side so the tails go to the back. We need to increase, so into that first stitch we will yarn over into the stitch, pull it up, go under, pull through 2 of the regular yarn and then through 2. So that's our increase. Now we need to work 6 double crochets. We have a tail right there. I believe that we can fit in 1 double crochet, pull our tail over, 2, 3, 4, 5, pull our tail about over at the back, and 6. So now we're ready for another increase. I think we have enough there. to make the first stitch of our increase. One, pull our tail over, and two. So that was our increase. So you can see how the tails are starting to fill in and become more full. All right, now I'm just going to pull up a long loop here, flip this around, and we can get a look at how full our fringe is. And that actually looks pretty darn good. All right, so I don't need to do another row of long locks. I'm just going to leave that be. So now I'm going to go back to my prototype here. So I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we're going to go to row 13, and then on row 14, won't that work out expeditiously? On row 14, we will add our next long locks. So I'm just going to do straight plain yarn to row 13. Now, if you want, you can tie off your tailspun, weave in your ends to hide them in the tails. For now, I'm just going to leave it. I want to see how it will look if I run it along the side. I suspect I'll have to come back, trim it up, weave in my ends. But for now, it's not particularly bothering me, so I'm going to leave it there while I do my next rows. I will be back when I'm ready to do our next row of a tailspun. So I've made to row 13. Here's the back of it. Now, my tailspun is attached at this side. So I have a couple of options. I could double crochet back across and pick it up here, but I would have liked to put into the ends of the row if I was going to do that. So I'm not going to do that. I could clip it off, weave in my ends, reattach over here, and keep going. That was what I was thinking first. But then I thought, why don't I carry it along the top edge over to here to start using it again? So I will just slip my hook through, pick up a stitch, move the tail over, and I will just slip stitch my way across, adding locks to the top. That'll give it a little more color and flair. And why not? This is me designing on the fly. Not that it's anything complicated, but you know. All right. Get my tails over there. Actually, we're going to take two tails over there because they're awfully close together. And we'll just slip stitch our way across. I want to make sure I'm not pulling it too tight. Oop, I'm sitting on my tailspun yarn. All right, here we go. All right, so there is our final stitch. So I will slip stitch into that. All right, now we are ready. There we go. Ready to roll. All right, we ended off with 11 double crochets between, so now we need 12 double crochets between our increases. So 1, 2, increase, get our tail over there. Oh, may have to quit and finish filming this another day. It's getting really awkward. 2, 3, 4. I wasn't keeping a close enough eye on my yarn. So I'm going to put my needle in there. My needle. Oh, my hook. I'm going to grab my other ball of yarn, which is here somewhere. Here it is. And we'll add that in. So I just tore it back to just before the increase. Or frogged it back, if you prefer. It's a kinder word. All right, so we were doing an increase. All right, so I'm just going to continue working. I'll finish this row, and then I'm going to do another row of tailspun back, and I'll see how it looks. If it looks okay, then I'll just do 2 rows of plain crochet, of the plain yarn crochet, just to finish it off. And I will show you the end result. See you in a bit. So I got my second row of locks put in. But when you look at it, the way the yarn went, I end up with a rather bare spot here. So what I'm going to do, another design choice, is I am going to find the center of my crescent, and then I will count back a certain distance, and then I'm going to put a V on the bottom using some more tails, and we'll see how that turns out. I'm going to have to go back up and add some more locks across here because we do have a bare spot. But this is what happens when you're designing on the fly. I don't know how it's going to look, but I'm going to keep going, and I will be back in a bit and update you on my next design choice or show you the finished product. See you in a bit. Well, it's a few days later, but I finally got the button put on my crochet cowl, scarf, shawl, whatever you want to call it. And here's how it looks once it's put on. I can't stop patting it. It's so soft and fluffy. But if you look underneath, there's actually large sections of just plain yarn. But because the extreme tail spun yarn hangs down so far, you just space it out so that the tails will cover that and make it look fuller. You can either wear it this way, or you can turn it around and wear it down like the back of a black coat. Imagine how that would look. Beautiful. So there you have it. Now you can try making your own extreme tailspun crochet cowl, we'll call it, because it's not really a shawl. It's not quite big enough to be a shawl. It's more like a capelet maybe. And I just have, oh, caught on my earring. Just have a button on the back that just pops right into the fabric of the crochet. Just like that. And there you have it. So I hope you enjoyed that little demonstration. If you did, do the stuff down below because I do stuff like this all the time. Thanks so much for joining me, guys.